Hey members, welcome back. Alright, so I'm going to give you this little ring topper and show you how to catch these two little hearts. I'm using this 3/4 inch dowel here because my hearts are about 3/4 inch. And you can see it here on my cry cut board, just a little bigger than 3/4. I'm going to set them into the frame in this way, cheeks opposite direction and points kind of catty corner to each other. Alright, so let's start. I've got my coil started with 30 inches of 18 gauge soft round copper wire, and I set it on my mandrel to my size and I put my dowel on top. I gave myself 6 loops and 7 on the bottom, and I closed this up without weave, just like I showed you from Elton. So the first, or the Elton variation I should say, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to bend this outside wire down. I'm holding the bottom of my shank to make sure that I get a nice solid bend down with nothing shifting too much. I'll do the same on this side. Just bend it down, make sure I've got a nice seat. These two are just kind of hanging out. I'm going to look on top and make sure my oval is good and that it's about the size that I need to take my stones. And that's what it is. So you'll notice I have 6 on top and I have 7 on the bottom, but I don't need to leave all 7 at the bottom. My two hearts are a little rounded on both sides. They're more tumbled. They're not quite flat. So they're not, I need a few more wires up top. So rather than just using the 6 up here, I'm going to give myself 2 more from the shank, and I still have 5 wires for a nice wide shank. I'm going to hold on to the edges right here real tight because of that bend. A portion of the shank here on this first outside wire has a bend right there, so you got to grip that pretty tight, and then you can bend this back. Okay, give yourself another little seat below, and we'll go to this side, do the same thing. Here's our bend. I'm going to hold real tight with some wide sturdy pliers, and I'm going to lift that outside shank wire. Okay, so now when I look at my coil, my Elton coil, I have an additional shelf right here to hold the bottom end of my stones if I need it. Okay, and in this case I do. It gives me all 6 wires to use on top. Now that my sides are down, I'm going to get my mandrel back up here, my working mandrel, my wooden one, and I'll just settle the wires there until they resist so that I can manipulate the top of these wires without the shank shifting too much. Okay, so it's a little bit odd because you'll work on the mandrel, but just like before, we'll take and just turn. I'm actually going to come off the mandrel for this. We'll turn these 2 bottom ones in and create a little seat. Just hold it right there. Don't push, don't pull. Just do a 90-degree bend in. Make sure that they sit nice. Remember that it comes off of this side coil. You see how it's pulled the wrap out? So you got to watch that on both sides. This can get a little wobbly, so we make sure to get that as close as we can, just like that. Okay, go to this side, do the same. Here's the one that comes off of the wrap, so I'll get real close to this one, and I'll just do a nice 90-degree turn in. Make sure it's laying nice and flat. And then I'll do this side, grip it right there, give it a 90-degree turn. Okay, so now I have a small inside shelf for some additional support for my stones here. When I put things together, when you put 2 stones together, like sea glass would be beautiful in this, you have to just make sure that the space in the middle here of your seat, of your shelf, doesn't let the stones come through it. Okay, so you got to make that bottom one a little bit smaller if you're going to catch a stone on each side, to make sure that you know, that doesn't get away from you. So I'll come back on my mandrel now that I got the shelf wires bent on the bottom. I'll make sure my spiral's real nice. I'm going to put this first stone in there. The point is going to go to this one, to that way, and then this one, the point will go in the opposite direction, just like that. Okay, we're going to snuggle them up so that, you know, they'll be kind of together like that to the inside of the ring. So the first thing I'll do is I'll just drop a couple more wires here, hold everything, and just lower them. Okay, so we've got our little Elton cage for our stones. And you see, once we drop the upper wires, it kind of snuggles them in a little bit more. Oh, one flipped over on me. They're going to be wiggly until we get them a little closer. So you'll just position these until you like them, until you love them. Make sure to stay good on your mandrel. I like to squeeze, make sure everything is good down here. I like to squeeze these sides in just slightly in case they get too wide, and make sure that your oval for your stones is nice. Okay, so this is Freeform. I just need to close these up and get them a little more snug onto my stones. I can do that. I like to do that right here at the divot of the heart, and so they'll go on opposite sides on both sides. You can do this with the stones in place, or you can take them out. I kind of like to just eyeball where my turns need to go. It's about a third of the way. And I'll take those out. I'll lift my two upper wires here just slightly so I can work one at a time. Get this guy a little bit out of the way. Get your round nose plier. And about a third of the way here, grab, hold your loop right here. You're going to make a right hand turn. Just like that, just a slight turn. Put that stone back up in here. Kind of make sure you've hit the mark there. And you can shape this a little bit. You can get your flats or you can get your bent nose, and you can soften this up a little bit. That looks pretty good to me. So I'll just lower this next one. Come right here, approximately at the same place. We made a right hand turn, so you're going to make a right hand turn. I go a little bit off of where I went last time just to make it whimsy. Just give a little turn. Get that divot right up on the other divot. Just like that, super cute. And then this last one, you can lower it slightly. Get it right here about at the same place. Hold your thumb right here and make a turn to the right. Okay, so if you look at that, kind of snuggles the stone up into this shape, and now I can just lay these down. Should kind of cover your stone. Make sure that those sides get it. Just kind of like that. Can lay that top one down a little bit more even. But let's get the other side in there. So there goes one. My other one is going to go in the opposite direction with the point here and the point here. Whoop. Don't worry, we'll snuggle it all up once we get our second stones turned in here, and we'll reshape for a better fit. Okay, so kind of in the same spots, I'm going to do the same thing. You can start with the upper or lower, whichever one you want. Get it about right here. I'm going to put my thumb on top of the wire right here. I'm going to get a turn into the wire. I might turn that side deeper later. Get it in about the same spot. Make a little right hand turn. Get it in about the same spot. Make a little right hand turn. Okay, let's look at it all from the sides now. And then you're just going to, with your hands, manipulate these to fit these stones in there a little bit better. You want it to kind of be like that. You want all the stone captured. You want a pretty shape. And you want this last wire, close to it. And you want them sitting side by side, not necessarily crowded up on each other, but close, right? Like this. Make sure your your shank stays on the mandrel. So this side I'm not too crazy about. I'm going to reshape it a little bit. Take this bottom one out slightly. I'm going to hold it more from here and turn it a little tighter. Like that. Get a little more close to my stone. Up here I'm going to take this one a little tighter too. Drag it a little more to the inside. This one I think is okay. Settle my wires back down to both sides. Keep your finger in the middle. You kind of want to be like this with it. So I've got my stones. I've got a pretty whimsical design that's got my stones fairly captured here. Looks good. And I have these two additional wires on the sides here. They're short, but if I need them to help me, they're available. And how they might help me, see, the stones are in place because we're on the mandrel, but once you get it off the mandrel, it's a different situation. So you'll put your stones back in, make sure they're sitting the way you want them to. It's a little bit of a squirrel. Okay, hello. I put one in there. That way, with the point that way, and then I'll put this one in here, with the point in the opposite way, and snuggle them up. I've got my finger underneath, holding them. So, and I'm going to turn this over. You see that space in the middle? They will jiggle right there because there's not enough holding them. So if you need to, you can take these two side wires and do an additional little stretch across. This one might be too short, but we'll see. And you can add a little bit more wire to the bottom there. So I'm going to do that. I'll get my plier. Just leaving the stones in there for your benefit. You can take yours out. And if you need to, take this one straight inside the shank. Cross it over nicely, and then you can make, an additional little seat right here if you need to. I am almost too short. I told you 30 inches. Actually, I think I can get it. I'm going to wrap right around that bar if I need to. Okay. I may not need to come the end of things once everything is all sewn up. That's a tough move. So I'm going to just leave them there to help me while I'm working. If you guys feel like your stones are wobbly or you might need this, give yourself 32 inches to start. So you have, I don't know how big your rings are going to be. So you have enough to get across here comfortably. But for now, I'm just leaving those two kind of crisscrossed underneath my shank here. And they're just going to sit there for a minute. They're nothing special. They're just to help me kind of balance these stones until I get everything together. All right? So I'll put them back in here because they fell out again. Well, actually, I'll get back on my mandrel. So once you get those two wires underneath there, it's going to shrink it a little bit. Push until you get resistance. Put the stones back in. And then make sure that your wires all seat properly. Okay, so those two little wires underneath there just gave me a little bit more pressure to hold the centers if you need them. And I'm just going to leave them right there. So now you're good to sew all this up. Before I do though, I'm going to tap my sides, woo, and shape these wires down a little bit more. So I'm holding my sides, I'm on my mandrel until I feel a lot of resistance. And my shank is nice, and I'm on the size that I'm near the size at least that I'm supposed to be on. You see how that can bulk out a little bit? So you're just watching these sides while you're working. Just going to tap that in. And then right up here, this way, squeeze and make it straight. You see how they can be a little bit off? Just squeeze right there and make sure they stay tight and that they stay nice and straight on the sides as you work. Once you tie everything together, it'll get easier. And I think I'm going to slim this one up a little bit more. This one on the left here is not as elegant as this one. Try to pull this out slightly more. And the other thing I'm going to do is, once you feel like you've got the fit, and that's pretty good right there for me, I like that a lot. Might reshape this bottom wire a little bit. You can turn these wires too, right? So if they're not sitting in the right way, like I just turned that down a little bit, you can turn those down a little bit. Once you feel like you got the stones nested in there the way you feel like you want to work with them, I like to just give little love taps to the edges here with my rubber mallet. Gentle. Hold your stones, make sure there's no jiggling. And I'm just tapping things in. So I'll hold from the opposite side. And I'm just going to get that big bulky wrap right there, laying down a little nicer. Turn this. Your stones might pop out until we get it all cinched up, so just hold steady. On this side, tap my shank a little bit everywhere. You want to make sure your shank wires are settled. Nothing's tied yet, so as I hit these and settle them back, it's raising the wires on top, right? Because these, you know, some of them, they continue, right? They all continue. So I'm going to settle my shank. I'm not hammering to change or harden yet. I'm just settling the shank wires to make sure that they're in order. And I'm settling my sides to make sure they're nice and straight, and I've got a good ring shelf to work with. So I'm real happy with this shape. Remember, we got two little stray fragment wires underneath to help us hold the center together while we weave around it. So now when I take it off the mandrel, it'll be a little more steady for you to work with, just because we put those two little wires there to help us. And then at the end, we'll see how everything feels. If we need to keep the wires there, then we'll cinch them up real clean to, you know, crisscross that center, okay? Or we'll make a little curl or whatever we need to do down there. But for now, they're just little helpers, and they're just going to sit there. All right, so now I'll use 26 gauge, and I'll use some of my bead balls, and I'll just work my way around here and do whatever kind of decorating that I want. You're constantly watching your shank. As you move and shift and sew the wires up top, these will want to move, possibly. So if you can work on the mandrel, you know, then seat yourself on the mandrel until the ring resists, and the stones will be real steady. And then you can kind of just you know, sew while you're on here. Sometimes you'll have to pop it off to sew the decorations, but it'll be easy for you to hold on to if you can work on the mandrel. Okay, remember that the two center wires, you know, have to be far enough on so that they don't bubble up here, and remember that we'll put some bead balls in here. You can even add additional wire if you want to. I don't think I did to the last one, but, oh, and I put these back in here backwards, look. Remember that the cheeks, the divots, go with these. They don't have to go that way, but that's how I had bent them up to go, so no wonder they were sitting in here weird. So I'll put my stones, there we go. So now the little divots go in where the heart goes, and that looks pretty good. That actually fits better. Now I know what happened. Okay, so if you take a look at this, this is how your two hearts, if you're using hearts, might sit. And if you're using something as fun as sea glass, you're kind of looking for, you know, the same thing, depending on the shape you're using. Okay. And then, like I said, we have to sew everything because it won't stay just this way. Okay. All right, you guys. So I'll see you in the next one. Get your stones fit, and then we'll just sew some of this up. 26 gauge and weave, add bead balls, etc. Okay, so that's how you bend up this one. There we go. We'll see you for the next one.